The evening began like many others inside the grand dining hall, where polished floors reflected warm light, and quiet confidence filled the air. Guests arrived dressed in fine clothing, their voices calm and assured as if the space belonged to them. Without question, soft music played in the background, and servers moved carefully between tables, trained to be efficient, invisible, and respectful. Among them was a young waitress named Alina who had worked there long enough to know every routine and every expectation. She walked with steady steps, carrying trays and responding politely to requests, her expression calm and professional. Alina had learned early in life how to blend into the background. She understood how to be present without being noticed and useful without being questioned. Her job required it, and her past had prepared her for it. She grew up in modest surroundings where attention was rarely given freely, and where hard work mattered more than dreams. Music, however, had always lived quietly inside her. She did not speak about it, and she did not expect it to matter in a place like this. At the far end of the hall stood a grand piano, polished and elegant, placed more as a symbol than a tool. It had been there for years, admired but rarely touched. Guests often commented on its beauty, but few asked to hear it played. Alina noticed it every time she passed. Her eyes would rest on it briefly before returning to her duties. No one else seemed to notice the way her posture softened when she was near it. As the evening unfolded, conversations grew livelier, and glasses were refilled. Laughter moved easily between tables, and the atmosphere carried a sense of privilege and comfort. Alina continued her work quietly, aware of the rhythm of the room. She listened without listening, and observed without reacting. Her role was clear, and she played it well. Yet inside, her thoughts drifted. She remembered late nights from years ago, when she sat alone at a worn piano, practicing softly so no one would complain. She remembered how music once felt like the only place where she could speak freely without words. Those memories never left her, but she kept them carefully hidden, believing they no longer belonged in her life. A group of guests near the center table began speaking about art and culture. Someone mentioned music, and another laughed, saying true talent was rare these days. The comment passed easily among them, but it stayed with Alina as she walked by. She did not feel anger, only a quiet awareness that talent often exists where no one looks. As the night progressed, one guest noticed the piano and asked casually if anyone ever played it. The question was light, but it stirred something. The manager responded politely, saying it was mostly decorative. The guest smiled and suggested it was a shame, because music could elevate any evening. Others agreed, nodding with interest. The idea settled into the room, gently yet noticeably. Alina felt her heart shift. She kept her eyes down and focused on her task, but her breath grew more careful. She had no intention of stepping forward, yet the moment stirred something she had not felt in a long time. A mix of longing and fear rose quietly inside her. She reminded herself of her place and continued working. The manager glanced around the room, considering the guest's request. His eyes passed over the staff, including Alina, who stood near the edge of the hall, holding a tray. Their eyes met briefly, and he noticed something he could not name, perhaps calm, perhaps depth. He looked away, uncertain. The room continued its rhythm, but something had changed. The piano no longer felt invisible, and Alina no longer felt entirely separate from it. She moved through the hall, aware that a simple question had opened a door she had kept closed for years. She did not yet know what would happen, but the evening no longer felt ordinary. This was the beginning of a moment that would challenge every quiet rule Alina had lived by, a moment that would ask her to choose between remaining unseen or stepping toward a part of herself she never truly left behind. The second part of the story continues as the evening moves deeper, and the feeling in the room grows heavier with quiet anticipation. Alina continues serving tables, yet her awareness has shifted. She notices details she usually ignores: the way voices rise and fall, the way guests glance. Piano more often now, the way the air itself feels charged with something unspoken. She remains composed on the outside, but inside her thoughts are no longer steady. As she walks between tables, she hears fragments of conversation. Guests speak about music performances they have attended and concerts held in distant cities. Some speak with authority and confidence, as if culture belongs naturally to them. Alina listens without reacting, but each word lands gently and persistently. She does not feel excluded, yet she feels aware of the distance between their world and hers, or at least the distance she has always believed existed. The piano stands quietly in its place, its polished surface reflecting warm light. Alina passes it once more, and feels the familiar pull. Her hands tighten slightly around the tray she carries. She reminds herself that this is not her role, that she is here to serve, not to be seen, yet the thought feels thinner now, less convincing than before. The manager moves through the room, checking on guests and responding with practiced ease. He senses the shift in energy and knows the request for music has not disappeared. He pauses near the piano again, resting his hand lightly against it. He looks thoughtful, uncertain how to proceed. He wants to please the guests, but also maintain order and expectation. A guest nearby notices him and asks again whether someone might play, even briefly. The tone is friendly, but curious. Others nearby listen, waiting for the answer. The manager smiles politely and says he will see what can be done. The words hang in the air, creating a quiet ripple of expectation. Alina hears this exchange and her breath catches slightly. She keeps her focus on her task, but her body reacts before her mind can settle. Her heart beats faster, and she feels warmth rise in her chest. Memories surface without invitation, the sound of keys at night, the comfort of music, when words felt impossible, the discipline she once practiced in silence. Those memories do not hurt, but they remind her of something unfinished. In the kitchen, staff exchange glances and small jokes. One server laughs and says they should charge extra for entertainment. Another shrugs and says rich people always want more. Alina listens quietly, drying her hands and steadying her breath. She feels separate from the conversation, as if standing slightly outside of herself. When she returns to the hall, she notices the guests' attention remains drawn toward the piano. Some glance at it between bites, others sit back, as if waiting for something to begin. The room has not stopped moving, yet it feels paused in a subtle way. The manager gathers the staff briefly and speaks in a low voice. He explains the guests are requesting music and asks if anyone has experience playing an instrument. A few staff members shake their heads, others smile awkwardly. Alina stands still, her eyes lowered, her mind races through possibilities. She could remain silent, as she always has, or she could speak a truth she has kept hidden for years. The silence stretches. The manager looks around, taking in each face. When his gaze reaches Alina, he pauses. Her calm expression does not reveal the storm beneath, but something about her stillness draws his attention. He asks her gently if she has ever played anything. The question is simple, but it lands with weight. Alina feels her throat tighten. She considers denying it, the word no resting on the edge of her tongue. It would be easy and familiar. Yet she feels tired of the easy choice. She feels the weight of years spent shrinking, and wonders what it would mean to answer honestly. Her voice comes out quiet but clear. She says she used to play the piano when she was younger. The room does not react loudly, but the manager looks surprised. He asks what she means by used to. She explains briefly that she learned as a child and practiced for many years before life changed. Her words are plain, without drama. The manager studies her face, looking for hesitation or exaggeration. He sees neither, only sincerity. He nods slowly and thanks her for sharing. He says nothing more and dismisses the staff. Yet the exchange lingers in the air like a question left unanswered. Alina returns to her duties, feeling exposed, yet relieved. The truth feels lighter than silence. Even if nothing comes of it, she does not know what the manager will decide, and she does not expect anything. She simply knows she has stepped slightly closer to herself. As the evening continues, the guests remain attentive. The piano stands ready, and Alina feels the moment drawing nearer. She finishes serving a table and pauses near the edge of the hall. Her hands rest briefly against a chair. As she grounds herself, she breathes slowly and listens to the. She understands now that something has already changed. Even if she never touches the piano tonight, she has acknowledged a part of herself she once believed was gone. The realization brings both fear and quiet strength. This second part closes with Alina standing between habit and possibility. The room waits, and so does she. The choice has not yet been made, but the path ahead has become visible, and once seen it cannot be unseen. The third part begins as the atmosphere in the hall continues to shift in a way that feels both gentle and unavoidable. Alina moves through the room with steady hands, yet her awareness is no longer anchored only to her tasks. She senses attention gathering, not loudly, but naturally, as if the room itself is leaning toward a decision that has not yet been spoken. Guests sit a little straighter, and conversations soften without instruction. Alina passes the piano again, and this time she does not look away. Her gaze rests on it longer than before, and she allows herself to acknowledge the feeling that rises in her chest. It is not excitement alone and not fear alone, but a combination of memory, readiness, and quiet resolve. Her body remembers the shape of the bench, the distance between keys, the posture she once practiced, until it felt natural. The manager stands near the piano once more and clears his throat softly. He addresses a small group of guests, saying he may have found someone who can play for a few minutes. The words are careful and respectful, not announced to the entire room, yet they carry farther than he expects. Several guests turn their heads, curiosity replacing casual interest. Alina hears her name spoken gently. She feels a warmth move through her arms and into her hands. She pauses where she stands and takes a slow breath. She knows this moment cannot be delayed without consequence. Even choosing silence now would be a choice, and she feels ready to choose honesty instead. She steps forward with measured movement, placing her tray down carefully. Her steps are calm, not rushed. She feels the floor beneath her feet and the weight of her body grounded and present. The room grows quieter as people notice her movement, and a few expressions shift from curiosity to surprise. The manager meets her halfway and asks again if she feels comfortable trying. Alina nods, once her voice remains steady, as she says she can play something simple. If that is acceptable. There is no dramatic reaction, only a quiet opening as space is made for her to pass. She approaches the piano, feeling the eyes of the room not as pressure, but as awareness. The bench feels familiar when she sits, and she adjusts her posture naturally. Her hands rest in her lap for a moment. As she allows her breathing to slow, she is aware of her heartbeat, yet it does not overwhelm her. When she places her fingers on the keys, the sensation is immediate and grounding. The surface is cool and smooth, and deeply familiar. She begins with a gentle touch, allowing the first notes to rise softly into the room. The sound carries warmth and clarity, and the effect is instant. Conversations stop, chairs remain still, and attention settles fully into the music. Alina does not think about the audience. She listens to the sound and follows it, allowing memory and feeling to guide her hands. The melody unfolds with simplicity and intention. Each note is placed with care and honesty. The room feels smaller and closer, as if drawn inward by the sound. Guests respond in quiet ways. Some lean forward, others rest their hands on the table. A woman closes her eyes, and a man exhales slowly. The music does not demand attention, yet it holds it completely. The piano fills the space without effort. Alina feels herself relax into the movement. Her shoulders soften, and her breathing deepens. The years she spent away from the instrument fall away, and what remains is presence. She allows the music to speak where words never could. This part closes as the melody continues, and the room is fully transformed. Alina is no longer simply a waitress, and the guests are no longer distant observers. They share a moment shaped by courage, sound, and truth, and nothing in the room remains untouched by it. The music continues, and with every passing moment, the room feels more connected to Alina and to itself. Her hands move steadily across the keys, guided by instinct and years of quiet practice. The sound grows fuller, not louder, but richer, carrying emotion that feels honest and grounded. Guests remain still, not because they are asked to be quiet, but because the music asks for presence, and they respond without resistance. Alina feels the piano answer her touch, as if it recognizes her return. The keys feel familiar and forgiving, allowing her to express what words never held. She remembers long nights from her past, when music was the only space where she felt understood. Those memories do not overwhelm her now. Instead, they give her strength and clarity. She realizes she is not reliving the past, but standing firmly in the present. Around the room, reactions unfold gently. A man who entered the hall with confidence now listens with humility. A woman who had spoken freely before now sits with her hands folded, her expression soft and reflective. No one looks away, no one interrupts. The music has created a shared understanding without explanation. Alina allows herself to breathe more deeply. As the piece continues, her shoulders relax, and her posture becomes natural. She no longer feels like she is stepping outside her place. She feels like she has arrived where she belongs. The piano is no longer an object of distance or fear. It is a bridge between who she has been and who she is becoming. The manager watches from a respectful distance, noticing how the room has changed. He sees how guests who often expect to be entertained are now quietly grateful. He understands that something rare is happening, not because of skill alone, but because of sincerity. He feels a sense of responsibility to protect this moment rather than control it. As the melody develops, Alina introduces subtle changes, letting emotion guide her touch. The music tells a story without asking for interpretation. It speaks of patience, endurance, and quiet hope. The sound is confident, yet gentle, grounded, yet expressive. The room follows her lead without effort. A few guests exchange glances filled with surprise and admiration. They did not expect this depth from someone they had not noticed before. The realization humbles them and draws them closer to the moment. The music feels personal, yet shared, creating a connection that crosses roles and expectations. Alina remains focused on the keys, but she senses the kindness in the room. She feels seen not as a novelty, but as a person. This awareness strengthens her resolve. She plays with greater freedom, trusting herself, and the space around her. The piano responds with clarity and warmth. As the piece moves toward its natural close, Alina softens her touch, allowing the sound to settle. The final notes carry calm and resolution. They do not rush toward an ending. They arrive gently and rest in the air. The room remains silent, honoring the space the music created. When the last sound fades, no one moves immediately. The silence feels complete and intentional. Alina keeps her hands resting lightly on the keys, feeling the vibration disappear beneath her fingers. She remains still, allowing the moment to finish on its own terms. Then slowly, applause begins, not sudden or loud, but sincere and steady. It fills the room with warmth rather than noise. Alina stands carefully, her expression calm and grateful. She looks out at the guests and meets faces filled with respect and appreciation. There is no distance now, only shared recognition. She steps away from the piano, returning to her place among the staff, yet nothing feels the same. The room has shifted, and so has she. The performance has ended, but its impact remains, carried quietly within everyone present and within Alina herself. If any dots or ellipses appear, rewrite the content without them. The night continues after the applause fades, and Alina returns to her work, moving through the dining hall with the same calm steps. Yet everything inside her feels different. Guests speak to her with warmth and sincerity. Some thank her quietly, while others simply smile with a kind recognition. She responds gently, never seeking attention, yet no longer shrinking from it. She understands that something meaningful has already taken place, and it does not need to be explained. As tables begin to empty, the energy in the room softens. Conversations feel slower, more thoughtful, And connected, the music has left an impression that words cannot easily replace. Alina notices how people linger longer than usual, as if unwilling to leave the feeling behind. She continues serving with care, feeling present in each movement and each interaction. When the final guests depart and the hall grows quiet, the staff begins to clean and close. As they always do, chairs are lifted and lights dimmed, yet the space feels warmer than before. Alina helps without hesitation. But her thoughts move inward, reflecting on what just happened. She does not feel overwhelmed or proud. She feels grounded, as if she has returned to a part of herself that was always waiting. The manager approaches her again, this time without urgency. He thanks her sincerely and tells her the evening was changed because of her music. He speaks with respect and openness, asking how she feels and whether she might consider playing again in the future. Alina listens carefully, appreciating the absence of pressure. She answers honestly, saying she needs time to reflect and understand what this means for her. He nods and assures her that her choice will be respected. Later that night, Alina walks home through familiar streets. The city feels quieter and closer. Streetlights glow softly, and the air feels calm. She thinks about her past and the years she spent believing that part of her life was over. She does not feel regret, only understanding. She realizes that nothing was lost, only paused. At home, she sits by the window, letting the night settle around her. Her hands rest in her lap, and she closes her eyes, briefly recalling the feeling of the keys beneath her fingers. She feels gratitude for the courage she found, and for the room that listened. She understands that stepping forward did not change who she is. It allowed her to be seen as she already was. Over the next few days, the memory of the performance stays with her, not as pressure, but as reassurance. She continues her routines, yet she moves with more confidence. She notices her voice sounds steadier when she speaks, and her thoughts feel clearer. Music has returned to her life, not as a dream, but as a living presence. She begins to practice again at home, using what she has available, not to prepare for an audience, but to reconnect with herself. Each note feels familiar and grounding. She does not rush or set expectations. She simply plays and listens. At work, guests occasionally ask about the piano, and she answers simply without exaggeration. She remains humble and open, understanding that the moment belonged to everyone who shared it. She knows now that her place in the world is not fixed by title or role. It is shaped by honesty and courage. This part of her story settles into quiet understanding. Alina does not chase recognition, and she does not retreat into silence. She stands comfortably between the two, knowing that her music and her voice will guide her forward one step at a time. The days that follow unfold with a steady calm, and Alina finds herself moving through them with a new awareness that feels grounded and real. Her routine remains familiar, yet her relationship to it has shifted. She wakes each morning without the heaviness that once followed her into the day, and she notices small details that used to pass unnoticed, like the quiet light through the window and the way her breath settles when she pauses. At the restaurant, her presence feels different, not louder or more demanding, but more certain. She performs her duties with the same care, yet she no longer feels the need to disappear into them. Guests greet her with recognition and respect, and she meets their eyes comfortably. She understands that being seen does not require explanation or performance, it simply requires honesty. Music begins to weave itself gently back into her life outside of work. She practices in the evenings when the world slows and her thoughts become clear. Her playing is unhurried and attentive. She listens to the sound and lets it guide her rather than forcing direction. The piano becomes a place of reflection and grounding rather than ambition. The manager continues to treat her with thoughtful respect. He asks her opinion about music nights and listens carefully to her comfort level. Together they shape a balance that honors both the space and her boundaries. Alina feels valued not only for her ability, but for her presence and integrity. This mutual understanding strengthens her confidence. Conversations with coworkers shift as well. Some approach her with curiosity and encouragement. Others simply treat her with a quiet acknowledgement that feels genuine. Alina responds with kindness and openness. She does not position herself differently, and she does not diminish herself either. She finds ease in being exactly who she is. Outside of work, she reconnects with people she once drifted away from. She speaks more openly about her journey and listens more deeply to others. These connections feel richer and more authentic, grounded in shared experience. Rather than comparison, she realizes that growth often brings people closer rather than apart. There are moments when doubt returns, softly reminding her of old habits and fears. She meets those moments with patience rather than resistance. She returns to the piano or to stillness and allows the feeling to pass without judgment. Each time she does this, her trust in herself deepens. Alina begins to understand that her courage was not found in a single moment, but in the choice to remain present afterward. She continues to show up with care and honesty, allowing her path to unfold naturally. She does not chase opportunity, and she does not avoid it. She listens and responds. As this part of her journey settles, she recognizes that transformation does not need spectacle. It grows through consistency, reflection, and the willingness to honor what feels true. Her life feels quieter yet fuller, and she carries that balance forward with grace and confidence. ready for whatever comes next without needing to rush toward it. The seventh part of the story unfolds with a deeper sense of maturity settling into Alina's life. She no longer feels as though she is standing at the edge of something uncertain. Instead, she feels rooted in the present, grounded by the choices she has already made each day, brings familiar responsibilities, yet she meets them with a calm confidence that continues to grow without effort. At the restaurant, the rhythm of her work feels natural and balanced. Music nights have become an accepted part of the atmosphere, but they are never forced. Alina plays when it feels right and steps back when it does not. Guests sense this authenticity and respond with respect rather than expectation. The piano is no longer a spectacle. It is a quiet presence that adds depth to the space. Alina notices how people behave differently when the music plays. Conversations soften and attention becomes more thoughtful. She sees how music changes the energy of a room without demanding anything in return. This understanding brings her quiet fulfillment. She realizes that her role is not to impress, but to create space for presence. Her relationship with herself continues to strengthen. She trusts her instincts and listens carefully to her inner voice. When invitations or opportunities arise, she considers them thoughtfully without pressure. She no longer feels the need to say yes to prove anything, nor does she hide behind refusal. She chooses based on alignment rather than fear. One evening after a performance, a young guest approaches her and speaks about how the music reminded them of a dream they once set aside. Alina listens with patience and kindness. She does not offer advice or solutions, she simply listens and affirms the value of remembering what once mattered. This exchange stays with her, reminding her that impact often happens quietly. At home, Alina continues to practice and explore music in ways that feel personal and nourishing. She experiments gently with new melodies and revisits old ones, allowing them to evolve alongside her. She understands that growth does not require urgency, it requires attention and care. Her confidence now extends beyond music. She speaks more openly in conversations and expresses her thoughts without hesitation. She notices that people listen not because she demands attention, but because she speaks with clarity and sincerity. This realization reinforces her sense of self-worth. The restaurant staff treats her as a trusted presence, someone whose calm steadiness adds balance to the team. She offers support when needed and accepts help when offered. Her relationships feel reciprocal and grounded. As time passes, Alina reflects on how far she has come. She sees that the greatest shift was internal. She no longer defines herself by limitation or past silence. She recognizes her own value without needing validation. This part of the story settles into a sense of continuity. Alina is not chasing a dramatic future, nor is she anchored to the past. She moves forward with awareness and intention, carrying music, courage, and honesty as companions rather than goals. She understands now that brilliance does not always announce itself. Sometimes it lives quietly in consistency. And that truth feels enough. The final part of the story settles gently into a sense of completion that feels natural rather than forced. Longer measures her life by moments of surprise or attention. She lives with an inner steadiness that guides her choices and shapes her days. Her work, her music, and her relationships now exist in harmony rather than competition, and that balance gives her peace. The restaurant remains a meaningful place for her, not because of what happened there, but because of what she discovered within herself while standing in that space. The piano is still there, elegant and quiet when not in use, and alive with warmth when she plays. Alina approaches it with respect and ease, never feeling the need to prove anything. Each time she sits at the keys, she does so with intention and presence, honoring both sound and silence. Guests continue to come and go. Some recognize her, and some do not, and both experiences feel complete. Alina understands now that recognition is not the measure of worth. What matters is the honesty she brings to each moment. Whether she is serving a table or playing a melody, she shows up fully, and that authenticity shapes her world. Her confidence deepens in quiet ways. She trusts her timing and listens closely to her instincts. When new opportunities appear, she considers them without fear or urgency. She knows she is allowed to choose a slower path, one that aligns with her values rather than expectations. This freedom feels earned and grounded. At home, her music continues to evolve. She plays for herself, often exploring sound without structure or outcome. These moments nourish her spirit and remind her why music matters to her. It is not a performance, it is a conversation with herself, and that connection feels sacred. Her relationships reflect this growth. Conversations feel honest and open. She listens without judgment and speaks without apology. The people in her life respond to this clarity with respect and warmth. Her world feels smaller, yet richer, built on sincerity rather than approval. One evening, as she walks home under the open sky, Alina pauses and listens to the quiet around her. She feels deeply present, grounded in who she is. And where she stands, she recognizes that the journey was never about stepping into the spotlight. It was about stepping into herself. The story does not end with applause or acclaim. It ends with quiet certainty. Alina lives, knowing that her voice matters, whether spoken or played, whether heard by many or by one she carries her music forward, as part of her life, not as a moment that passed, but as a truth that remains steady and whole.